And welcome everybody to the fifth and final day of the Virtual Residency 2021 workshop. This year's workshop is at the introductory, intermediate, and advanced levels, and our first panel today is at the advanced level. So this is teams of cyber infrastructure professionals, recruitment and retention, management, team building, and motivation. Our panel moderator is Sandra Gessing from University of Notre Dame. And so I'm just going to turn the show over to Sandra to get us all started.
Thank you very much, Henry. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be the moderator of this panel. I give a short introduction to the topic and then I give it to the panelists. So let me start the slideshow. Can you see my slides and in full screen?
Yep, looks great.
Great. So yeah, we are talking about teams of CI professionals, recruitment and retention, management, team building, and motivation. And I'm happy to introduce the panelists, Ian Carsten, Scott Hampton, Christina Maimone, Amy Nisa, and Dane Scow. And if we talk about teams of CI professionals, we are talking about HPC facilitators, research software engineers, science gateway creators. And they're going also under the name of research computing professionals and research data professionals. These are really very much non-traditional academic career paths. And as you can see in the picture, there's a lot of gaps still in the academic landscape, really to improve the career path, to have a real career path. And that is, so if we look at the cyber infrastructure and research software, science gateways are already widely used, and not only in academia, but in national labs and industry. But there's this lack of incentives and recognition, and also formal training, especially in academia. That is sometimes what really hampers the uptake of career paths. And if we look, we are working on changing the academic culture in this regard by recognizing them. And so I'm passionate about this, changing academic culture to improve career paths for the hidden figures in research. And we call them a little bit the hidden figures. It's like in the movie, they're doing really the essential work for research, but often they are not recognized for that. And so it's a long road, but it already started, so that is great. And I asked my panelists to give me one introduction. So I will do this alphabetically now. So Ian Carsten is the director of the Research Software Engineering for Computational and Data Science at Princeton. And during his PhD, he discovered he liked writing code, helping others, and the technology around research more than the research itself. So he believes research computing is an increasing essential service that provides a competitive advantage to researchers. He's also passionate about bringing awareness and recognition to the role of research software engineer within the academic research community. So Scott Hampton is an assistant director for high performance computing at the University of Notre Dame, so a direct colleague of mine. And Scott is still trying to figure out how to combine his love of computer science and his love of the beach into a career. Until then, you can find him hanging around the data center in flip-flops. So Christina Maimone is a research data services lead at the Northwestern University. Christina is happy to have found her way to research computing and wants to ensure research computing and research support roles are viable, effective career paths for others as well. So Amy Nisa is the consulting and outreach lead in research IT at the University of California, Berkeley. They coordinate the consulting efforts across the data management and research computing programs to offer a holistic approach to data and computation, and also facilitate research IT community partnership and outreach program. Amy's background is a science and data librarian, giving them experience with data in all aspects of the research lifecycle. Professional and research interests include interdisciplinary and open digital scholarship, innovative use of technology in academic environments, equity in STEM, and critical digital literacy. Dane Sko is an executive director of the North Dakota State University Center for Computational Assisted Science and Technology. Dane was thrilled to be dubbed both a geek and a nerd by his then 12-year-old daughter and has spent his career trying to earn these accolades. He's passionate about improving opportunities for residents of rural communities to work on world-class teams on leading-edge technologies and creating bridges between communities. So I thought that was a little bit a different way to introduce people that they got their little blurbs, let's say, about themselves and about the topic. And so what we want now from each of the panelists is to hear the story, what worked and what did not work so well. And they can pick one of the topics in recruitment or retention, in management, in team building, in motivation. And I just for the moment would also go for the alphabetically order. So Ian, why don't you start?
Great, thanks, Sandra. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. So in the last 5 years, I have had the fortune or unpleasant reality of having to hire 10 research software engineers at Princeton. And over the course of that, I feel like I want to talk a little bit about recruitment and retention of what's worked well and what hasn't. One of the things early on we found were that writing job descriptions in the way that we'd always written them wasn't particularly successful in terms of the fact that these aren't particularly well-known, understood careers. We're trying to attract a certain demographic. We need to play to our strengths rather than maybe writing them as a description and writing them more as an ad. So what we ended up doing was using a tool called Textio, which I can put a link in the chat in a minute, which helped us write more inclusive language. It helped us. It's an algorithm basically on writing more engaging job descriptions and ads, and we really reevaluated the entire way we were recruiting, especially through these job descriptions and ads. It was really successful. We saw an overnight change in the quality of applicants that we were receiving. You know, we have to appeal to our strengths, which are we're in an academic institution, we get to do interesting things. We're never going to compete at the salary level, so we have to compete at the intellectually challenging, interesting, and finding the people who want to do this work and explaining what that is through a job description. So, I mean, I just picked the first bullet because it was there. I'm happy to talk more about the other ones if there are questions about them, but I want to save some for the other panelists. So let me pass it along to who's ever next to give an example of one of theirs.
So the next one is Scott. I go with alphabetically or the last name. We can switch that in between to make it more dynamic.
Well, so yeah, so I think recruitment and retention is a great place to start, and maybe we can kind of just round robin these. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk for a few minutes. This bullet point in particular, I think is one of our secret sauce, if you will, things here at Notre Dame. Now, obviously, we have, there's some very bright students here at Notre Dame. We find that we don't typically recruit them so much because the fact that a lot of them are here for a few years and then they're going off other places. And we've found that by working with more of the local school, let's say commuter schools, if you will. So for instance, here in South Bend, we have Indiana University campus. There's also some smaller colleges here, and with a community college or two. And we actually go out and work to recruit those students for internships. And again, the type of work that we do is not something people want to grow up to be. It's very few people are at a young age are interested in HPC, and so we're doing a lot of training to these students. It is a fair amount of work on our part, because you're working with students who are still very young in their academic careers often. But we find that by giving these students a chance to work with us and training them, and a lot of times these are students who are maybe from this area, have family here, and who are interested in staying regionally after they graduate. And so we've had a lot of luck. I would say even if we get, out of every 4 interns, we get a full-time employee, roughly. So, I mean, we've had great success and great people, very smart people. But kind of looking outside of, just looking outside of our typical student base that we serve, more into the community as an opportunity to train people here locally who oftentimes are interested in staying in this area.
Thank you, Scott. So I will go now to Christina.
Hello. So I am part of a research computing team that supports a number of different services, like a lot of the teams out there. So we have HPC folks, some of us who support data science, folks who do research workflows or cloud or visualization. And so keeping the team together and as a team is one of the big challenges, I think, for the group. One of the things that worked well for us, at least in person, was to do something we call high fives, where we have a box out, we have Post-it notes, and it's just there available when somebody on the team does something you want to recognize them for. And it can be fairly small things like, helping you print your handouts before a workshop when you're running late, or it can be, doing a great job on a large project. Write a note, stick it in the box, and then once a month during our weekly team meetings, we would pull them out, read them. Everybody read one, and both the person who wrote the high five and the person who it was about receiving it just get a small little trinket, a piece of candy, a little figurine. We all have little figurines stacked up along the edge of our desks. And it was a nice way to just encourage people to recognize each other on the team and to recognize across different service areas. We post them up on the wall, so a very colorful wall with the different Post-its up that attracts attention. People like to see it when they come into our office. It's just a really nice way to remind people to acknowledge each other, look out for things that others were doing, and share that with the team. Say that it has not worked very well virtually. We have not figured out how to transition that. So part of it is that we don't see each other on the same regular basis, especially across different service areas and teams. So we'll see each other in a Zoom meeting. There's sort of fewer opportunities to see what others are doing and recognize it. There are already other platforms out there to do it, but yet to figure out quite how to make that work in our new reality. So.
Thank you very much, Christina. Amy?
Good morning, everyone. So I want to piggyback on what everybody has said so far. So in regards to recruitment and retention, I want to mention that I participated in a research study where we were analyzing data librarian job ads and made several suggestions for job advertisements, and I'd be happy to drop a link to that paper in the chat. One of them, for example, is having only 3 required qualifications. And we found that since underrepresented groups are less likely to apply for jobs if they don't qualify for each of the required qualifications, by dropping that number down, you're opening yourself up to a much more diverse pool of applicants. And I think that just doing general job ads is kind of a thing of the past now. I think at Berkeley, we used to think, like, oh, everybody wants to come out to the West Coast and work out here. And that's just not the case. And we have to do a lot more targeted recruitment. So working with groups on campus, like there's a Society of Black Engineers, for example, and actually like reaching out to them and doing recruitment. or to specific folks that you know from the professional community. So those are just a couple of thoughts on that. And I really want to talk about team building a little bit. And I think it's important to hire lots of different types of people. On my team, we have undergrads, grad students, librarians, people from the National Lab, IT staff, of course, and even researchers as well. And the way that we do that, it's not that we have a huge team, is that we tend to buy out portions of people's time across campus. So maybe we have 20% of this adjunct who's in the statistics department, and then we get that researcher perspective and a little bit of these folks from the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. So that's a really great way to diversify your team, even if you're quite small. And I also think that having fun is really important. I really liked what you were sharing, Christina. And I think that that helps build cohesion on teams. So we do things like game nights, which also works virtually, we have found out. At the beginning of our meetings, I like to do something a little bit fun. So sometimes I play music because I used to DJ in a past life, or maybe just have a little fun conversation piece, like, you know, did you do anything fun for Memorial Day? And of course, keeping in mind that everybody's different and some people are introverted, so inviting them to share in the chat, not making them go on camera or speak necessarily. And then because we have so many different types of folks on our team, similar to what Christina was saying, we have data and computing folks, and we do a lot of things to make sure that they have opportunities to work together. So we have shared office hours, we do cross trainings for each other, we really do a lot of co-consulting and co-teaching, and that really allows them to get exposure to each other and learn from each other, which ultimately builds a stronger team.
Thank you very much, Amy. Dane? And if you are talking, you're still muted.
There, let's try that. Good morning. I would say that I agree with most all of the comments that have been made so far, and the one bit that I would focus on has been that it is really difficult to grow a team in a hurry, and that when one deals with an organization like ours and pulling together a team, that taking the long view and making slow and steady progress is probably the best recipe for success. I really sympathize and empathize with the fellow from Princeton that was talking about having to add 10 people in a short period of time. Have had to do that myself, and the best friend in that situation was headhunters, but that's a very expensive option. I've had the privilege of being at the national laboratories in an urban setting for most of my career, and the last 10 years or so at universities in rural settings. And the trend that I see is that the most successful method of getting wonderful additions to our team has been the internship and the recruit people who already want to be there approach. And I think that is working in both the urban and the rural situations. There are a number of challenges with that approach. The first being that it's a little slow, and you never really know who you're going to retain and who you're not. But I think that the approach of saying most of the people are going to decide to go elsewhere, and that is a service we provide the nation by training people and putting them out into the workforce with relevant experiences, and we get to keep 10% or 20% of the people that decide that they would really like to have a career in this field. I think that another aspect that really brings to the forefront that is a big advantage is that it directly engages us with the core mission of the institution, whether that be research or education or both. Being directly engaged with that program and being seen as part of the overall, a critical part of the overall mission of the institution is just essential.
Thank you very much. So that was now the start. We have prepared a couple of questions, but I'm happy to take questions from the audience. So the plan is, as you can see, yeah, we are prepared, but we would give always the audience the priority over questions, and type something in chat, raise your hands, however you want to put your questions here. So otherwise, I would start with the first question from our list. And this time I go the other way around. So Dane, you can leave yourself directly unmuted. So what are you looking for when you look at applications of CI professionals?
I'm looking for a curious mind. I'm looking for somebody who wants to learn. If they are passionate about learning and improving anything, be it their situation at work, the software, the hardware, whatever, we can find a place for them on the team. If they're not interested in doing that and they're interested primarily in career advancement or salary or something else, then they're probably not a good fit.
Thank you very much. So we got a question from the audience. Following up. So Jonathan, you want to put it yourself or ask it yourself? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, we had a brief discussion of this yesterday, particularly in the chat, but there's definitely a tension between the success and the adaptation that everyone has had over the last year of the pandemic of doing things like consulting remotely. We also had some examples of people doing this kind of work remotely even before the pandemic. But of course, there's also this tension with university work is always been very place-based, always, at the institution. So what do people think about reconciling this? Is this, post-pandemic, would you consider someone to be hired remotely or not?
So maybe I give this question now to Amy.
Yeah, sure. Happy to jump in here. I would absolutely consider hiring folks remotely. And I think that the pandemic has really broken the paradigm of this type of work being place-based. For example, we've seen a lot more people register for our workshops. A lot more people are utilizing our consulting services. And researchers have said to us directly, like, oh, wow, I don't have to walk across campus and come to a specific building in order to talk to you. And so now I can actually use your services. And so I think going forward, we're going to be at least hybrid, but some of our things are going to be completely virtual. So I think that that very much fits in with that. And I think that offering that option to folks will, again, allow for a more diverse application pool, because, if people have family obligations, they can still do those things while they're at home, or if people live in other regions and don't want to move to where you are, they still have an opportunity for the work.
Thank you, Amy.
If I could jump in, Sandra, just to add on a little bit of that, because I think that this is actually the key question in trying to build the bridge between the rural and urban Americas. That the opportunities for remote work are a godsend for rural America, and we would be fools collectively and rurally not to take advantage of the demonstration that the past year has provided, that you can do world-class work from Minot, North Dakota, and have a client in Manhattan, and it works. It can work. It doesn't automatically work, but it can work. And I think that the biggest obstacle to that is that, as surprising as it is that institutions of higher education are so tradition bound and so medieval in their social structures, that they are very resistant to change. And I think that that is probably the biggest roadblock that I face in dealing with enabling these opportunities like the remote work that have been uncovered.
Thank you very much, Dane. Anyone else want to bring in a thought?
I can jump in. I definitely have some thoughts. I mean, I think we're all thinking about this maybe 24/7 of what's going to happen and how it's going to work when we go back. I would like to add that, you know, from Princeton's perspective, I don't think this is this is common knowledge at this point, that the president of our university has come out and said that Princeton is part of Princeton's culture is being in person on campus. It's inherent to the Princeton experience, and that's created issues for us with thinking similarly to others, which is this work can be done, has been proven to be done, and is effective. We don't need to be in person. So how we reconcile that with our institutions is going to be a challenge for us in this field. I think the biggest question that I have, and I don't have an answer for this, and maybe next year is the time to say this, is what happens when half go back and half don't? How do we have hybrid teams? How do we make that work? How do we make a fully remote person and a fully on-campus person feel like equals as part of a team? And I don't have an answer for that. And I think that this next year is where we're going to have to prove that we can do that, and then make the business case to our administration of why this can work and how this can work. And because I agree across the board that we've shown it can work, it is effective, and we can continue to do good work. And to Dane's point, it's hard to hire people. And so if we can hire them from anywhere, that really can bring talented, diverse, and qualified people to the table that we couldn't get otherwise.
Thanks very much, Ian. Another comment?
So I can echo Ian's comments. We're getting a lot of that same emphasis, let's say, from the university, that they really want the student experience on campus. And I understand that, and I get that. And for certain areas of campus, that is critical. I'm not entirely sure that the research computing is one of those areas. And I think they understand it, and we're, they're trying pilot programs. I will say that, at least here at Notre Dame, they are considering, having these options. And one of the things that there was a comment earlier within the text here about, what HR and what IT view are two different things. And from HR's perspective, they represent the university as a whole. So here it's 5,000 plus full-time people. And so I understand it's very hard to have one policy for everyone. But as we've pointed out, I lost one of my best employees in January, and to industry because they were like, you can stay at your house in Indiana, you don't have to come out here, and we're gonna nearly double your salary. And we certainly can't compete with that. So I think that it's important that we do have some options for people.
Thank you very much, Scott. So then I would go to another question, or maybe the first question. So what are you looking for when you look at applications of CI professionals? Anyone else besides Dane want to say something here? Okay, good.
Oh, I can say, sorry, I was thinking if I was trying to remember what was said before that we went on to a different conversation. So one of the things that we've done, so I work with data science programming services, and we changed the job titles to be data scientist, because for both actually staff and student consultants that we hire, which made a big difference in widening the pool of applicants that we got and getting more attention on the positions. So that part of it was great, but then that means that there are more resumes and applications to filter through to try and find people who will be successful in the role. So things that I'm usually looking for are some sort of facilitation skills. So that's not a term that they would usually have on a resume, but and it might not even show up on the resume at all. But in initial interviews, we're talking about when have you helped somebody out? When have you taught somebody something? Have you ever, written down instructions for someone else? How are you teaching other people and getting your knowledge out to other folks? Also look for experience with, or at least strong interest in the research environment. So when we do get folks who maybe have been data scientists in industry, happy to have them, but it can be a rough transition if they are very unfamiliar with the academic environment. So trying to see what their experiences there have been has been useful. And also, before I forget to do it, I just want to plug a study that we're working on research computing workforce. So it has some of these issues in it. If you were on one of the sessions yesterday, Scott Yokel may have shared this as well, but trying to do a widespread survey of everyone if we can in research computing. So we have some data to work with for some of these questions as well.
I'll add just a couple more things onto that. I totally agree with everything that Christina just said. We also look for, different types of diversity. So, beyond racial and gender, which are, of course, very important, socioeconomic, but then also backgrounds as well. So I just hired somebody from the social sciences, which is really exciting for our team. Because now we have a graduate student in the social sciences who's kind of embedded in there. So when we want to do outreach to them, or, he has a really good insight into what types of work they're doing and who to reach. So that's really important as well. And then we also look for where it's going to be a mutual benefit, really, where they have something to bring to our group. And then we also have something that we can offer them and advance their career as well. So maybe they want to get more experience with the cloud or HPC, and really understanding what those motivations are, and then, putting them in the right position so it's mutually beneficial.
Thanks both. Anyone else want to give a further comment on this topic? Okay, cool. So the next question, and I'm also very curious. So what are incentives you can offer already at your institution in regard to career development? The next question goes more in the direction what should be done, maybe, but would be an ideal word if you could select it, even though it's not offered at your institution yet. So I would, open it to both. And who wants to take this one? Or the both of them first?
I can start on this one. So in terms of opportunities we can provide, one of the selling points I do like to give folks is that it is a learning opportunity, so that there is the chance to learn a lot of things. And I would be perfectly happy if I had somebody stay for several years, and then if they decided to move on, I'm okay with that. I'm sort of expecting that to happen because I get them for several very good years. They get skills that will help their career. They get to figure out a little bit of what they want to do. At least they're trying out this career path, right? So there's a chance of keeping them around. So learning, there's lots of chances to do that, but also then the opportunity to maybe focus your work a little bit. I think all of us probably have more work to do than we can get done. And so we have some choice in prioritizing that. So if, somebody, do they want to focus on, building their leadership and management skills? Do they want to focus on, really getting their technical skills better? Do they want to focus on, consulting skills? Do they want to build a public profile, right? There are different opportunities, different ways to do the job successfully. And we can have that opportunity to sort of tailor that and help them build the type of career that they want to build.
Cool, great, thanks. Someone else? Okay, I can point over again. Ian?
I can add a little bit. I agree. And I think one of the things that we sometimes tend to forget about is we're in an academic environment, with a culture of learning and education and growing is kind of ingrained around us. And we really try to leverage that as a point of, a steady conversation of, what are you looking to learn, making time to learn those things. It's a constantly evolving landscape. And so it benefits everyone if we make learning part of our culture as well. I think there are challenges in terms of career development and career opportunities at a single institution, right? I mean, there's only so much that up the ladder that you can grow internally, and that's something that we are struggling with a bit at Princeton, which is clearly articulating and making visible a career ladder for folks who come in so that they can see they have a future at Princeton. They can see that this can be a long-term option, because it's, at least in the research software engineer world, it's fairly new, and we don't want people to get discouraged just because they don't see examples in front of them. So clearly articulating, this is our plan, this is how you can grow long-term in this profession. At least that's how we're approaching it, in an effort to, Christina had said, get a couple years and move on. I'm hoping we don't have to adopt that model of, we hope we can make the folks who enjoy the work have a long career, at least the opportunity for that.
If I may, I'll jump in and add to that, because I think Ian's hit on a key point, which is we need to have these transitions that are promotion opportunities, especially for the young people, where their value add, the market value of their skill set changes rapidly, especially if you view it as a percentage of their starting salary, because we frequently start new students at a relatively low level, but they add tens of thousands of dollars of value to their skill set each year, and it's very difficult for our organizations to keep up with that kind of a promotion curve. So we need to do something to address that problem. I think reflecting on this question in preparation for the meeting, the four things that I think that I've found most successful in creating and retaining a good team is show the people that you respect them, that they are respected and that people care for them. That they stay because they want to stay, not because they feel they have to stay. That they're engaged in the primary mission of the institution, and that they're part of a team and a profession where there are worldwide organizations and networks of people. And I think that is one of the incentives that I have found I am able to make some progress on, a little bit more than some of the others, is to make sure that people have opportunities to join the human network beyond their own institution, so that it's not just that I'm the best of the four staff that happen to be working at NDSU. I am a world-class expert in GPFS or whatever. And that we're providing value to an individual's family or their social unit that they care about more than just them individually. I think if we're trying to focus our reward structure only on the individual, we're going to lose opportunities to do things like point out the values of tuition waivers for family members and other things that education has historically used as compensation tools.
Dane, I definitely agree with looking beyond just the immediate group in terms of development, and, agreed about the national efforts, but also looking across your campus as well. And so, who are the partners that your team is working with, and are there possibilities for advancements into those groups? And then if somebody takes another position on campus, then you have somebody who's embedded there and is like an automatic partner. So I agree definitely about looking beyond the immediate team. And I think another thing that we can offer is really individualized development plans and being really clear about that, and understanding that each person on your team is different. They have different motivations, and sitting down with them and intentionally creating a development plan. And you can do that by, asking, what do you like? What motivates you? Do you have the opportunities to do what you do best? One person on my team really wanted experience presenting at a national conference. And so I actually hooked her up with this virtual residency, and she gave one of the presentations earlier in the week. Other people don't want to public speak at all. One of my grad students really wanted experience working in the data center. And although we tend to have undergraduates do that work, I thought, what the heck, let's get him in there and let's give him that experience if that's what he wants. So I think that that's really important. And I've also been seeing a lot of studies about recognition, and that people in some cases are even more motivated by recognition than they are money. Of course, both are important, and I would encourage both avenues. But so when I sit down individually with people from my team, I always make sure to think of something positive that they've done in the last couple of weeks and thank them individually for that. And then when we're in our group settings, I also like to give a shout out at the top of the meeting for somebody who did something great. And so you can do that recognition on an individual level as well as in a group.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone. So we have a question from the audience. So Sean Mitchison asked, he's curious for places here, how much do you have perhaps a position dedicated from IT to manage your hardware, software, etc., or do you have an IT person under your research area that works with IT but not for IT? Who would like to take that? Scott, maybe?
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm trying to think how to answer the question. So I guess the answer, like so many times, is like, it depends. So the center I work for, so it's actually called the Center for Research Computing. We actually are part of the what's now called Notre Dame Research, or more commonly the Office of Research. So we're completely separate from the central IT here on campus in terms of reporting structure, but we obviously work very close with our colleagues, in the central IT. So and again, within our center, even there's so many different positions. So if we're just talking about HPC operations, so that would entail both the hardware management and the user support, training, that sort of thing. So there's kind of a mixture between the two. Some of our team that their primary role is kind of the hardware IT support, if you will, come from many different backgrounds. I actually have one of my colleagues we stole from Princeton a few years ago. So sorry about that. But it's more about, when we're looking, like I have a position open now, and it's kind of generalized because we just need a person right now. But we've kind of written the position to someone who's maybe coming more from the IT or the research side could apply for this. And so wherever, whatever applicants we get and whatever their focus is, we'll just kind of move things around. And I can maybe talk about that with respect to a different question here, but I mean, we're very fluid internally of what do you want to do? So, I had an employee who was more on the research public facing side of things and came to me and was much more interested in taking on a bigger role in the hardware side of things. And we were like, okay, sure. So, I mean, that applies to many of the questions we're talking about in terms of, incentives and career development and things like that. But one of the advantages we have is kind of that ability to, plug and play, if you will. It's not our staff, and we all have certain training, but we have things we have to get done, but within that, what do you like to do? So I don't know if I answered the question or not.
Yeah, I think you answered. Does anyone want to jump in here?
So we are part of Central IT, our research computing team, and then there's a research computing infrastructure team as well that is under the infrastructure part of the IT group. Most of the time, I think it's good that we are in IT. It has some benefits. So one of the main benefits is that there was actually already the expectation of job levels and job families in place. So more so than if we had been, say, an academic department, where it's a little bit more of a free-for-all. There are grades, there are levels, there is some sort of progression that is visible. The challenges come when research computing isn't quite like the rest of IT, and the expectations for the levels and advancement don't necessarily align. And then when I think, as everyone probably has conversations with HR trying to explain, yes, I need this person, and they also have to have these skills, and no, that actually is harder and it should be compensated differently, can be a challenge. Some of the challenges we've had come up recently of being IT and not being in an academic department is can be more difficult for grants or doing research studies or running that. We don't have those type of appointments, so it's a trade-off, but I think it can work in either situation. They just have slightly different challenges.
I would agree. At NDSU, we've actually made the transition from the VPR's office to IT, and I'm fortunate that we have good relations with both structures, but that is probably the minority of the cases. Usually it seems that one branch or the other is out of favor with the other. But I tell our CIO that he runs Ford and I run the Lotus Ford division. It's where, to change metaphors, we're family. We're not necessarily siblings with central IT, but we are definitely cousins. We have to maintain good relations. There are a lot of similar and synergistic and mutually dependent skill sets, but I would fully agree that more often than not, HPC requires that you have skills, significant skills from multiple different aspects, and it is a challenge to explain that difference to HR.
Yeah, definitely can see that also. So we have another question from Nicholas Bates. Do any of you foresee academic programs at the undergraduate graduate level for CI research facilitation, or do you think it's a field that inherently strives from a multitude of academic backgrounds? Ian, you want to jump in there maybe?
Yeah, so I've thought about this in the context of research software engineers specifically, but even before that was a thing, I think it absolutely benefits from having people come at this from a multitude of different backgrounds. I think there's a huge benefit from having experience either as a researcher or experience from somewhere else that lets you empathize with the research workflow. It helps you relate. It brings in, I like Dane's Lotus example. Things are changing rapidly, things are changing quickly. I think having a formal academic program will be slightly outdated in a matter of months or years. I think programs like this, like the virtual residency, are really what's needed, which is to have people that are in the field and wanting to learn more about it, an ability for them to pick up maybe a more formal way of education. So I don't really see it happening, because I don't think that's the biggest challenge right now, but for perhaps maybe as things get more specific skills, if it becomes more specificity is needed in the future, I could see maybe it evolving to that. But for now, I think it thrives from a multitude of different career paths. Someone in my department says research computing is for all the people who didn't know what they wanted to be when they grew up, and that people really have walked pretty interesting paths to end up here, and I think that benefits us.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to jump in?
I just want to say that I completely agree with what Ian said. And it reminds me a little bit of data science in that way. And although at Berkeley we are offering undergraduate degrees in data science, we're making sure that the students also have a different emphasis as well. So it could be through the humanities, it might be a social justice lens. So it's kind of like, what are the other bits that you bring to data science? And I see that very much the same with CI and research facilitation. And I think by keeping it open and having it be multidisciplinary, of course, we're gonna see a lot more diversity as well. I think if we start making formal programs, then it'll kind of turn into the old way of, you have to have a computer science degree in order to do this or something. And I think that would be a detriment to our field.
I would
Thanks.
fully agree that we've had much more success in taking people who are strong in the research experience and relatively weaker in the IT experience than the other way around. I do think and I would agree that a formal major of CI or research computing is probably not the right path. I do wonder if a concentration or a minor approach might be a good idea, because it would allow people to explore a more structured way of gaining the experience that most of us have gained by walking that very convoluted path.
Great, thanks. Any further comments? Otherwise, I would go to the next question. So what are the average size of the HPC teams, and how many researchers do you or does your team size support? So maybe Dane, you should start again.
Well, we're at the small end of the scale. I would say we have 4 full-time staff, including myself, and we support 100 research teams and somewhere close to 400 individual researchers. That is very challenging to do, and I am keenly aware that I tell my boss the last year that we are one sneeze away from catastrophe, because when you're that small, an individual person matters extraordinarily amount. It's 25% of my workforce if somebody is out sick.
Absolutely. Scott, maybe?
So we're very lucky here. If I'm just looking at HPC operations, so that includes, as I mentioned earlier, our more hardware-focused team members and then the user support team. So between the two, we actually have a staff of 10, and our size is, we tend to support, or the number of current accounts that we have tends to float around 2,200 students, faculty, and staff. I would say of those, probably no more than 400 to 500 are regular users. So, some of those, a couple hundred each semester, will tend to be just course accounts. And so students will do something for their course, and then once that's done, they go on. So, in terms of the distribution between researchers and students, I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head, but at this type of university, we interact much more with with graduate students and researchers than faculty, although we do work with faculty as well, but they tend to be the ones going off and trying to find the money, while the students and research staff are the ones who are kind of doing the day-to-day stuff. So.
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
I was just quickly trying to pull up a couple metrics. So as far as size of our team, we're incredibly small. We have 4 full-time staff that are in research IT. A 5th person, we have a shared position between research IT and the library. So we have half of her. And then we have little bits of all kinds of other people across campus that I was mentioning. So let's see, we have like 3 graduate students. We have 4 or 5 undergrads right now. So those probably add up to a couple more people, but that really is our secret, is that kind of buying out different people's time. As far as who we're serving, I was just taking a quick look at in 2020, we answered like about 1,120 just like help tickets, like I can't log into the cluster type of thing. As far as full on consultations, looks like we did 186 of those in 2020. We also keep some other interesting metrics about who are the consultations with. So I'm seeing we reached 163 different units on campus, which is pretty awesome. So we're not just working with the high energy physicists, for example. And likewise, the majority of who we're working with is grad students. I'm seeing like 38% of people are grad students. Actually interest, and like 25% faculty, and then, you know, staff and postdocs and folks like that as well. So that we have a really big mission. You know, we're here to support like everybody on campus, and Berkeley is really big. And it's interesting that, you know, we have like 4.5 full-time people that are doing that. So we do a lot of jujitsu to make that happen.
Very cool. Thanks a lot.
So I can add the Princeton's perspective, and I'll try to keep it quick. We're also very lucky that we have a rather large research computing. So our research computing department is closing in on 40 people at this point, roughly 12 on researcher engagement, facilitation, that kind of work, answering help tickets, 5 or 6 so in the systems and storage, so that's more hardware facing. Research software engineer group is 10, soon to be 12, and you know, we're very focused on kind of deep impact on a few number of projects, and cloud architects and others. So all told, it's almost 40. We support around 1,000 users on our HPC systems. It's a growing operation, and it's grown a lot over the last 7-8 years too. It's almost quadrupled in that time, as the university is looking to invest more and more in research computing.
Many thanks. So another question is, how do you keep track of consultation data, and what tools do you use for that? So Christina answered it already in the chat with me that they keep a spreadsheet. Amy also answered with spreadsheet. Any other tools maybe except for spreadsheets that people use?
Oh, so I was saying that we used to use a spreadsheet, but as our program grew more and more, the spreadsheet became very unreasonable. So now we use Asana and a Jupyter notebook. And I would be happy to share that with anybody. If you're interested, feel free to contact me.
Oh, sorry, I did read only the beginning. Sorry for that.
No problem.
So and Christina also, yeah, she adds some more information. So maybe Christina, you want to talk about it?
Sure. So we have a couple different, so consult, a lot of people, you can mean different things by consult. So we have our HPC folks who support our cluster and a lot of the computing resources, and they work with the normal IT ticketing system since we are a part of IT. So they process tickets that way. For metrics, which I love that Amy had them there and could report them. I'm also a big one to have metrics to share. It does help with talking to folks around the university to be able to say how many people you support. So definitely, if you aren't keeping track of that, start counting things. Anything is useful. But so HPC folks are usually using the ticketing system, and then the sort of more in-depth research consultations, or where they're working with somebody one-on-one, they are keeping a separate list of those. Services we support, one of them is a data science programming visualization consulting service. And so we run that through a spreadsheet that just has a form that fills it, so that we can at least get, the name, email, ID, that kind of stuff from the folks who are requesting a consult. We can assign it. We have that ping, a Slack channel for our small data team, so that they know when a new consult has come in, and then we can discuss which student or staff member is going to take that, and then they can update the status. Are they working with the person? Is it done? When did they respond? So that we can keep on track of making sure that that's happening. The spreadsheet worked better for us with having students. The help ticket system that we have for IT is not the most user-friendly one in the world. And so getting it out of there was actually a better system. And I do pull the data from a spreadsheet into just a database that I wrote that it's like tied into our directory system. So I can look up the people and see what department they were in, or I can, keep track of what other services they might be using, like our workshops. We do use Eventbrite for workshop registrations, so that we can get data on who is coming to our workshops.
Great, thanks. Any further comments?
I'll just add one more thing that, in addition to tracking numbers and who the consultations are, we found it really useful to track what the topics are as well. And so we have actually I'll post something in the chat of, what are the topics that faculty are most interested in? Are those different than the topics that grad students or staff are most interested in? And that has really helped us realize like who some of our biggest customers were. And then we provided some really targeted outreach to them based on that, as well as develop new services. We saw so many people were coming to us with questions about sensitive data. And so we realized, oh my gosh, we need to do something about this and, build a HPC cluster that can, handle HIPAA data and all of that. So the metrics are great for telling our story as well as service development as well.
A similar thing that we've been doing is tracking the proposals that we're involved with creating, and that has been both a helpful focus to make sure that we are involved with as many proposal generations as possible, and that people would like us to be, and that we offer services that are helpful for people that are writing proposals. So that's been a very positive feedback network.
Okay, so I would go to one of our questions from the list again. So what are the biggest challenges in managing a team of CI professionals? What was something that really stuck out for you? Whoever wants to start first. Okay.
I can go first. I mean, I already said it. For me, it's been hiring. I've had to hire a lot, and then every time a new person comes on the team dynamic changes, the team culture changes, and that's clearly been a challenge for me. I don't know if that's strictly related to being a CI professional, or rather just the fact that growing a team is a challenge. Hiring CI professionals, because again, we want to find people who are capable and a right fit for this work, who aren't necessarily actively seeking out this kind of work, is certainly a challenge. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we've had some success with better job ads to get to what's fun about the job, what's interesting about the job, why would you want to do this? But it's still an absolute challenge.
Definitely. Anyone else?
I would say one of the challenges is that we bill ourselves as primarily optimizers. We are helping people to use tools more efficiently, more effectively, and in new ways. And so innovation and constant improvement cycles are our bread and butter. And to deal with the fact that we live in organizations where there are levers that one can't move that are beyond your control, it can be a very big source of frustration for myself and my staff. And bringing it back around to the big view about overall impact and overall perceptions is a constant mantra that we just have to keep in mind, that the little irritations can become tempests in the teapot if you let them. You just have to decompress and take the long view.
Great, thanks. Further thoughts? Amy? Maybe?
Yeah, I'll add another another thought in that, you know, again, about different personalities. So there's going to be different folks on your team, and it's really important to remember that people are different and have different learning styles and different preferences. So while it can be a challenge, I think it's an opportunity as well, to make sure that everybody feels included. I always, you know, tell my folks that they can turn their cameras off during meetings. I don't like to require that. I'm a naturally extroverted person, and I have a lot of introverts on my team. And so I really try to remember, if we're going to have a discussion, to send out discussion questions in advance, because I've done a lot of reading that introverts like to have time to think about things first and not just be put on the spot. So just some little things like that of just accommodating different personality types and preferences.
Thanks. Further comment?
I have a very different angle on it, about team as a whole. One of the functions that I think doesn't get recognized because we're already maybe shorter on staff than we would like to be, is having folks who are doing administrative logistics support type roles within a research computing team. That sometimes it's seen that, well, you already have these folks, and so they're doing that job, but they have specialized skills, and freeing them up to use those specialized skills by having somebody who can support their work can be really helpful and make their lives easier and better. And that's something that's been a challenge to communicate at times, right? That there is a lot of work that we could use help with, and that there are ways to do that without having it be another, say, computing professional, right? That if you got an academic department, often you do have support staff as part of that. That's an important function for a research computing team as well, and that it can make a big impact on how well the team works.
Great, thanks. So I would go to another question. So are you seeing improvement in professional diversity? What works, what doesn't? And maybe I start with Scott.
So I would say that we are seeing improvement, but I think that is, I'm going to choose my words carefully. I think that is because we're coming from a not very diverse place, and so any improvement is improvement. I think we still have a long ways to go. In terms of what works, and this was mentioned earlier, we make it a point to actively go out and search for people who are not typically represented in our field, and it's an ongoing thing. We start that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very robust internship program And so again, we are actively going out and trying to find sort of the non-typical people to come into that situation. There's a program here on campus every summer that involves high school students, and we are constantly on the selection committee for that program to bring us, again, kind of the non-traditional applicants for that program. Yeah, it's just something. Just to kind of finish my thought, what doesn't work is just expecting that it's going to happen on its own. It's a very active process, and we really put a lot of effort in, and it's paying off. I mean, we have on my team now, we definitely have a much more diverse group of people than a lot of the numbers would suggest, just by percentages. And so it's improving. I think we still have a long ways to go, but yeah, great thoughts.
Further thoughts from someone else? Okay. Oh, Amy. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say, Scott, I agree about being proactive instead of reactive completely. We also put as a requirement in our job ads a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And then we also state in our job ads that not just that we value this, but how we do that as well, so that folks, as they're looking at our job ads, perhaps see themselves there. And I think it was Christina made the point, I can't remember who it was, of looking beyond your campus for opportunities as well. So we run a Women in Data Science event every year, and actually somebody became interested in us because they attended that event. So that was a really cool, natural way of doing that. Or one of the people on my team is on the Women in HPC mentorship program, which is really great. So I think that there's ways to plug existing folks into national efforts, as well as you're recruiting people as well, doing so through the job ad and the interview process, and just making it at the forefront. Don't make like the token diversity question at the end. Like, how can you weave diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout all of the questions in the interview process?
I like that very much, that it's not the, oh, by the way, we also go for diversity, yes. And also not as asking someone like, oh, we still have to involve women. Can you please apply or something? Yeah. So we are at the end of our panel here. We have 1 minute left. So thank you very much to the panelists. And I chose this picture for the end of the presentation, because I think that the research computing ecosystem is a really kind and welcoming ecosystem. We only have to get the word more out there that it is this way, and that we are really welcoming diversity, and we are working on equity and all these things. So thank you very much. I really appreciate all your insights, and I think the audience also. You can see it, excellent panel. So yeah, thanks. And I give it from here to Henry.
Well, thank you, panel. This was wonderful and delightful, and it generated a lot of valuable discussion. I'm really happy about that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.